All right, so it looks like we don't have anyone in the waiting room now, so I think we can go ahead and get started. Michael, do you want to introduce the meeting real quick, and then I will go through the how to use Zoom features? And I think you're on mute.
I was on mute. Thanks. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Tonight's meeting is the virtual meeting for Burtonsville Access Road. I am the project manager, and at this point, I'll just turn it over to Matt Johnson, my associate. He will walk you all through the ins and outs of how we're going to conduct the Zoom meeting and give you a couple of, quick tutorials, and then I will come back and conduct the meeting.
All right. Thanks. And Matt, can you go ahead and go to the next slide, please? So my name is Matt Johnson. I'm a project manager here at MCDOT, and I'm just going to walk through a little bit about how to use Zoom, although I'm sure that most of you have used it by now during the pandemic. So the meeting is being recorded, and the recording of this video will be posted to the project webpage in a couple days once we have a chance to get it uploaded. So keep that in mind. If you don't want your face or your voice to be recorded, please don't turn your camera on and don't speak during the meeting. You can still ask questions by using the chat feature, which we'll talk about in just a minute. Next slide, please. So we have asked you to keep your cameras turned off to reduce the bandwidth of the meeting so that everyone can participate. So please don't turn it on. And next slide, please. You are all on mute, and you do not have the ability to unmute yourselves right now. However, we can unmute you during the question and answer period. So in order to speak, you'll need to use the raise hand feature, which we're going to talk about in just a second. If you have dialed in by telephone and you're using the telephone audio, you can unmute yourself by dialing *6 during that period. Next slide, please. If you would like to use the chat feature to ask a question during the meeting, we'll be answering those questions at the end of the meeting, but you can ask a question via the chat at any point. So there is a chat box down at the bottom of the meeting. You can click that, and at the bottom, there's a drop-down box that allows you to select who you're sending the chat to. Please select Matt Kozak. He's going to be handling the questions until the question and answer period. So send those questions to him. He's the person going to be monitoring the chat. Next slide, please. In order to raise your hand, depending on which version of Zoom you have, there are different ways to do that. Sometimes that appears in the participants window, and sometimes it appears in the reactions window. If you've dialed in by phone, you can raise your hand by dialing *9. Go ahead to the next slide, please. And I'm going to turn it over to Michael now to get us started with the actual meeting materials.
Matt, thank you so much. What you see in front of you is the agenda we have for tonight. Matt just went over the overview for the ins and outs of doing the Zoom meeting. Next, we're going to go over the project team and the goals of this meeting. And I'll give you a project background and then an overview of the project. We will take questions and answers before we adjourn. As Matt indicated, to make things work smoothly, please hold your questions till the end. We will, believe you me, we'll give you ample opportunity to provide us with all your questions. And as Matt indicated, if you don't want to have your voice recorded, you can send the question via chat or subsequently after the meeting via email to me, and I'll be happy to answer any questions after the meeting. Next. The project team, I am Michael Mitchell. Obviously, I'm with Montgomery County Department of Transportation. I'm the project manager. Matt Johnson, my good colleague, he's doing the moderating for this meeting. With me are Rick Adams and Matt Kozak of RK&K. They're the consultants that are helping us. Rick is the project director, and Matt Kozak is the project engineer. Next. The objectives of the meeting are to give you an overview of this project, which is Burtonsville Access Road. This is a county project. And we're going to review the preliminary, or more accurately, I should say, the concept roadway plans and the shared use path design. And we're going to get input from you all on our design and the schedule and any other issues that you want to provide input on. Then we're going to review the next steps for this project. And I will give you my contact information at the very end. I want to stress or reiterate that this meeting is only and only about the county's Burtonsville Access Road project. Although I will mention SHA's project, tonight we are only discussing this project, the county's project. Next. The background for the project. The project actually has a good bit of history. It was originally in the master plan, 1997 Fairland Master Plan. I was the project manager myself. We completed, actually, we took it through, planning, preliminary design, and final design. I had finished final design somewhere around 2008 or so, and then we had budget constraints. And so the funding for construction was postponed in what we call in our budget to the out years, beyond 6 years. And in that time, the certain regulations, for instance, for stormwater management have changed. And now we have some new criteria or guidelines for road design. So we had to, in a manner of speaking, start all over again. So, and that's what this project is. The county council has now funded it. So we have started again, and that's why I come before you. Next. The history of project in I want to say the late 2000s, the owner of Burtonsville Town Center did a redevelopment of his property, the BMC Property Group, and they constructed, as part of their development, about 400 feet of the Burtonsville Access Road. That's the portion that connects to Maryland 198. That is existing today. That's been existing for about 10, 12 years now. Next. As far as the previous plans, there is a master plan, Burtonsville Crossroads neighborhood plan, which was adopted in 2012. This project, BAR, is identified as a key connection to existing local streets. But I'll be honest with you, in reality, there is not a whole lot of different streets that it connects to. It basically connects from Maryland 198 to the access road to elementary school. The project is now funded for final design and construction in our current current budget. Next. As far as the master plans, we also have a Montgomery County bicycle master plan, the 2018 version of it. Burtonsville Access Road is identified in there as having a side path, and I will show you that in a second. And key connections to other planned facilities. But as I said, there's not a whole lot of other facilities. This road is kind of like, a small thing that only goes from Maryland 198 to the school access road. Next. Overview of the project. This is the SHA's project, and I made myself I'll be honest with you, some cheat notes so I don't misstate anything. As you all probably know, SHA did a planning study for an entire corridor of Maryland 198 and Maryland 28, which they completed in early 2021. That project, which is from I-95 to Georgia Avenue, they have now broken it up to various segments. The segment that includes Burtonsville is now called Segment D. SHA completed the preliminary planning for Segment D, which is from Old Columbia Pike to US 29A earlier this year. They are now moving forward with the next step, which is the NEPA study, the environmental study. And they want to get the environmental approvals for that project. But as they have pointed out to me, they need to have funding in place to complete or get the approval for NEPA. And at this point, SHA doesn't have funding in place for final design, let alone construction of Segment D or any other segments of Maryland 198, Maryland 28 corridor. So that's an update on SHA's project, but I want to talk about this for a second, that the projects are somewhat not connected, but related in the sense that as part of the options or alternatives that SHA has been considering is one that they would put a median along Maryland 198, especially on this stretch, Segment D, which would, affect the access to the businesses on the north side. And allow me to step back when we originally did the planning for this study, one of the issues that was identified in this segment, the accident rate was twice the statewide average. And that was contributed to vehicles making left turns, whether to the business on the south side of Maryland 198 or to the north side. So that was always, in the back of people's mind as far as having a road to provide an access from the rear to the businesses, just in case SHA pursued an option to put a median along Maryland 198 in this stretch of the road. Next. As far as the overview of our project, next. You all should be familiar with the project now. The project limits is roughly 1,000 linear feet. It will go from the school access road and it will connect to the portion that's already been constructed, and that connects to Maryland 198. Next. The goals of the project as identified in the Burtonsville Crossroad Neighborhood Plan are to transform the area from a crossroad to a community, to provide expanded network of streets, bikeways, and pedestrian routes, and also the issue that I just identified, to be able to provide access to the businesses from the rear, and to create a more unified and pedestrian-friendly downtown Burtonsville. That's for our project exclusively, and provide alternative access, which I just mentioned, provide improved bike and pedestrian safety, and improve access to the school. Next. This is the roadway typical section. When we did the original design, we had two 12-foot lanes, an 8-foot parking lane, and two 5-foot sidewalks. As I mentioned, since then, the road design standards have been updated. The latest version is called the Complete Design Guide. And I want to stress all of these, with various versions in my career with the county, all of them are guidelines. They are not like in black and white that, just because there is a typical section, that's what we use. And with that, we have tried to accommodate as much as possible what the guidelines call for. The right-of-way width for this project was specified by County Council to be 60 feet. That's what we designed it the first time, and we have maintained that. So we haven't deviated from that, and there are a number of reasons for that. One of them would be we minimize impacts to the property owners, to the businesses, for instance, or the school. And we have kept the travel lanes as 12-foot lanes, and the complete design guides for this type of road typically calls for 11-foot lanes. We went with 12-foot lanes, and there is very valid reasons for that. When we did what we call auto turn, which is a software we have that shows the geometry of especially large vehicles turning into and out of businesses or side driveways or school access road, it would have been very difficult, especially for large delivery vehicles, to negotiate a geometry with 11-foot lanes. So we have kept the 12-foot lanes, but we have, and the correct verb is squeeze. We have squeezed in 8-foot sidewalk, which is pretty generous, and we have a 10-foot side path. There is still a buffer. It's narrow, in fact, too narrow to have any trees planted, but it will be a green area between the sidewalk and the curb, and also between the side path and the curb. So that's the typical section, which conforms and is consistent with the current guidelines, which is the Complete Design Guide. Next. This is the overall view of the project, and I want to stress right now we are at what I call about 15% design. We haven't completed preliminary design. We are on target to get there by the end of April, but this is pretty much what it's going to look like. And I want to stress this is really not that different, other than the width of the sidewalk and the side path, from what we had designed previously. What is shown in like the dark tan color, obviously, is the road itself, the proposed road itself. And what is shown in the crosshatch, which is most of the businesses, the parking lot of the businesses, that is what in our business we call chasing the grade. In order to make the grades work and the drainage to work on those properties, we're going to be on their property temporarily to mill and repave those parking lots. But the permanent footpath is what's shown in the dark tan or brown color. and the sidewalk is shown in yellow, and the orange is the side path on the north. This is roughly about 1,000 feet. We're going to reconstruct a little bit of what's already been constructed to be able to squeeze in the side path more easily, because what's been constructed, it doesn't have enough room. So that portion, we're going to do a little bit of reconstruction of the portion that's already been built. But that in a nutshell is what the project is. And as I said, it's roughly about 1,000 feet. What is not shown is the stormwater management. And as I said, that's because we are at concept design stage. Once we get into preliminary, and more so when we are into final, we will know exactly where we're going to put our stormwater management facilities. But it's probably going to be very much like what we had in the original design. But at this point, until we run it by the Department of Permitting Services, I'm not ready to share that with you. So we are only at concept stage. So that's the overall view of the project. Next. The schedule of the project is a little ambitious, but I think we're going to make it. We're going to finish the design by the end of this calendar year. And then I will turn it over to my colleagues in our property acquisition section, and they will have about 18 months to complete the property acquisition. And the construction is scheduled to start in July of 2024. It should take about a year, hopefully less, but approximately that much. And we're going to try to time it to do the construction for where the school connects during the summer month when the school is not in session, to accommodate them, and then finish up the rest of it, at a later time. So that is the project schedule. Next. This is the question and answer section. Next. As the instructions that Matt went over, please raise your hand, or if you prefer, you can type it in the chat room. We are here to answer all your questions. So take it away.
Well, so far, Michael, we do not have any hands up, so no questions so far, but oh, here's a hand. All right, so I'm going to call on Mark Farrow. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself. Whenever I call on you, you will have to usually press a button to accept being unmuted. So I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself, Mark. You should be able to unmute yourself. Go ahead, Mark.
Okay, is that good or?
Yep, we can hear you.
We can hear you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right. Couple things. Has anybody talked to any of the landowners yet about the acquisition of the land? Because I know that's a sticking point with the fire department, which owns the cell phone tower, and the Burtonsville Fuel, which owns a big part of that property. And that's one question. The other one is the road to the access, the road, I guess, or pathway to the north. It isn't really a sidewalk. There's no businesses on the north side. Is that road necessary for like pedestrians or whatever, when you have the sidewalk that's actually facing the businesses to the south of the access road? I think that would be where most of the people would be walking back and forth or doing anything. So I don't know if that road would be you would have to have that. Maybe you could have parking on both sides of the road instead of that, and give more parking to the businesses who may lose some of their parking at the front of the business. And the other thing is, all those businesses, they've done facade improvements that the county helped fund for the front of the buildings, but now the back of the buildings that were never meant to be to be seen from the back, they're not going to look so good. Is the county going to help with, facade improvements on the back of those buildings to make it look a lot better once this road is in?
Okay, I'll take those one at a time. As far as the property acquisition, we don't approach the property owners at this stage, which is concept or even preliminary design. Once we get the final design where we know exactly what the impacts are, what the property acquisition needs are, then we prepare plats, and then we turn it over to my colleagues in the property acquisition section. And there is a process for that. If you would like, I'll go over it, but in a nutshell, what they do is they hire independent appraisers. They are not county employees, that they determine a fair market value, and then they will make an offer to the property owners. And I'll just stop there because, you know, that's like something that's about at least a year away from now. So at this point, we don't even have plats, but I can assure you the property owners at the appropriate time when we have developed the plats would be contacted and they get to have their say. With regard to the design, as I went over, we do have criteria for design of any type of roadway. And on this one, and particularly because it is called for in the bicycle master plan, which calls for a side path, or in the old days, we called them shared use path. And it calls for a side use path, and the complete design guides call for a side path for this type of road. You are correct in looking at it as saying, well, there is nothing on the north side. Well, for one thing, there is a school. And second, it is with the vision to looking into the future that that network would get expanded. When SHA, if and when SHA does any project along 198 and builds, you know, side paths or other bicyclist facilities, they would provide a connection to this one. And it could also continue on the school access road, then wrap around and continue on. So at this point, it will look like it's just a little bit by itself, but if we don't build it now, it is a lot harder to come back and do it later. So for that reason, because of the design guides and also what it's called for in the master plan, we have that. And as far as your third point, I'm sorry, if you can repeat your third question, there was a third item you had in mind.
The facades.
Oh, the facade, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, my colleagues in the Department of Housing and Community Affairs, I worked with them closely when I did the design the first go around, and they are the ones there. That's the county entity that work closely with the businesses as far as facade improvements. At this point, when I check with them, they don't have anything at this point. And we, the Department of Transportation, we are not in the business of, you know, doing facade improvements for businesses or, you know, somebody's house, let's say. But that's obviously something, that issue that we are aware of. This was an issue that came up the first go around, and it's a valid comment. The businesses' doors or entrances are all on 198, and this would be an option. At this point, you know, when the county builds this thing, it has nothing, it doesn't change anything in terms of the operation of the businesses. The point that you're raising is if and when SHA does their project, and if they cut off access to the businesses from 198, then it will become necessary for people to access the businesses from the rear. But having said that, that's something the county can always look at through agencies such as Department of Housing and Community Affairs to come up with a program to assist the businesses as far as the facade, their facade on the rear.
Can I ask one more thing?
Yes, go ahead.
Is there going to be access to those buildings, like driveways that can go to those buildings from this access road? When you put the access road in, is there going to be an entrance to all those businesses from this road?
We are, as I showed in the overall plan, the road connects to all the parking lots in the back.
Okay.
So, and if there is an access right now from the rear parking lot, for instance, and I know they're no longer there, I'm just using the name because it's easy. Cybo's parking lot was on the back of the business, basically, and, you know, or other restaurants. And they can still come in from the rear or walk around. As I said, now there's going to be a sidewalk that people can use to come around to the front facade of the building along 198. But the short answer to your question, I'll reiterate, we are providing connection to all the driveways from the rear.
Okay, good.
I think it's good to have my good colleague, Roger Stanley. He's with the Department of Housing and Community Affairs, and he's got his hands up. So if Matt you could allow him to ask his question or make comments.
Yeah, Rogers, you should be able to unmute yourself now.
Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I'm Roger Stanley. I'm Chief of the Neighborhood Revitalization Section in the Department of Housing and Community Affairs. And I just wanted to address the question regarding assistance for facade improvements on the rear of the buildings. As you know, we did quite a bit, as the gentleman said, on the north side of Route 198 with several of the properties there. We have a program, which is going to be a county-wide facade easement program that will be funded beginning July 1st over a 6-year period for about $2.9 million. So we'll be reaching out to property owners all over the county. We have some target areas that we're going to focus on first, but we'll reach back out to people in Burtonsville should the project get completed, or if we do work simultaneously. If property owners are interested, we'll certainly be willing to work with them. So funding is available, and I'll be in touch with Michael. He invited me to the meeting, and I'm glad you asked the question. Thank you.
Roger, thank you. Rogers, thank you so much.
Mhm.
So right now we don't have any hands up. I did see there were a couple of hands that went up, but they've gone back down. So I assume those people already had their questions answered. A couple of questions did come into the chat to me, so I'll go ahead and address those. But if anyone else has questions that you haven't sent in by chat yet, please send those to Matt Kozak. And if you have a question you'd still like to ask verbally, you can go ahead and raise your hand now. But let me go through the questions that have come into me first. The first is, will the video of the meeting be made public? And I did say this at the beginning, but in case you joined later, this recording will be posted to our website within a couple days. Another question, and this one's for Michael. Can we get a copy of the slides? Are the slides going to be posted to the website, Michael?
At this point, the PowerPoint has not been posted. I have posted the overall plan view and the typical sections. After tonight's meeting, I will post the PowerPoint also to the same website. That's the website you all went to register for this meeting. It will be there. And the video will be there too.
Okay, and we have a question from Deirdre. Are you taking any road design measures to reduce speeds and keep the goal of focusing on walkability and bikeability, especially considering the wider road design?
Well, thank you for that question. As far as like reducing speeds and so forth, this road, as you probably noticed, doesn't go really much of anywhere. It only goes from Maryland 198 to school access road. And my own experience has been anytime you have on-street parking, inherently that's going to reduce the travel speeds on that road. This is going to be fairly narrow or tight for people to try to even speed, and it's such a short stretch. This project is not, and I cannot comment on any other project. And I believe the second component that was enhancing, walking or cycling, I believe it was. Yeah, and as well, somebody else was asking me why are we building a side path? Now this is the flip side of that question. We are building a side path or shared use path, as we call it. People can bike on it or ride their bike or stroller or use their stroller. And also we have an 8-foot, very generous width, 8-foot sidewalk on the south side of the road. So the answer to the pedestrian accessibility is yes and yes. We are doing the most anybody could do, particularly within a 60-foot, which is a very narrow right of way.
And I have one more question on my side from Nick. Has the possibility of a traffic signal been evaluated on the eastern end of the access road at Maryland 198?
Very good point. We are not making the connection. The connection is already there. When I worked on this project the first time, obviously, as I indicated, the developer of the Burtonsville Town Center was way ahead of us, and they really wanted it. They really wanted the traffic signal there. And to just say it in very concisely, for any traffic signal, there are what in traffic engineering we call warrants. You can't just go put a traffic signal. In other words, it has to meet certain criteria. And typically, number 1 and number 2 are the most important one, although the other ones are obviously applicable. At that point, and this is a state road, you have to keep in mind, Maryland 198 is a state road, so they are the ones who decide where to put a signal or not to put a signal. They had not approved it. When I started working on this project last year, I had heard information verbally from my colleagues in traffic engineering that it has now met the warrants for a traffic signal. And presumably, if the developer is pursuing that and SHA grants them the approval, the traffic signal will be installed. But as part of this project, we are not looking into it because that connection already exists right now. But it's something that if it doesn't happen, and I'll be honest with you, I think it probably will happen before this project goes to construction or by the time the construction is completed. By the time if the construction is complete and then this signal hasn't been installed, that will be something that I can definitely look at with my colleagues in our traffic engineering division.
Okay, so I don't have any more questions. We do have one hand up from Peter. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself, Peter. So you should be able to.
I got it. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Peter.
All right. So I'm concerned. You already answered my question regarding the traffic light, and I understand that's a SHA road, so it is what it is. My question is, as you look at the parking lot behind the buildings, and if ever you've driven anywhere behind those buildings, you talk about doing some grade improvement and doing some asphalt, relaying asphalt, so on, so to improve the grade of those parking lots. But are the parking lots behind those buildings going to be contiguous so that you have a common parking area regardless of which store you want to go to? And secondly, will you be helping the property owners with repaving their property so that it becomes more of a shopping center rather than a raceway right now with the ruts and the potholes and whatever else there is back there?
Okay, Peter. We are milling and repaving the parking lots individually and only on a needed basis. The project is not funded for what we call, that's my term, by the way, private improvements. For instance, I'll give you a kind of hyperbole example. If I was building a road next to your home and you came and asked me, hey, Michael, could you replace the sod in my front yard? My answer would be no, my project is only to build this road. And if I touch your driveway, I'll reconstruct your driveway for you. That's the same type of nature. We are not making, doing private improvements. That's your property. I'm just saying generally. That's your parking lot, so it's your responsibility to pave it or maintain it. And this project is not funded for those private improvements right now. As far as providing access or making it a communal parking between all the businesses, we don't have the right. And I'll explain that to you. Most of these are properties that are individually owned. Like property owner A, I'll just make an example because it's easy, is Cybels. The other one might be the tire shop or another restaurant, and that's their property. Unless there is an easement or agreement between the property owners which allow the customers from Cybels to park in the tire store's parking lot, we don't get into that. And we don't even have the authority to do that because it's like individual rights. To give you kind of like a hyperbole, it would be like you asking me if I'm improving the road next to your house, Michael, can you connect my driveway to my neighbor so I can park on his driveway? The answer would be, no, I can't do that. I don't have that authority. So that would be something that perhaps the businesses can get together either now or after the project is completed to see they can give each other cross easements and improve their parking lots to make it more of like a shopping center. It's a very valid point you are making, but that is not the business that the Department of Transportation is in. And my project, the goal for it, the scope for it, doesn't include that, and at this point is not funded for that.
All right, I have an analogy. When you did the sidewalks in our area, we paved all of the sidewalks in our area a couple of years ago. You use Muriel, I guess, or Muriel, or what, the Hispanic company that did all of the concrete work. Along with that, you also posted or sent each individual homeowner the ability for them to at their cost, but at a rate that's cheaper than you normally would get to do their driveways. Would you not be able to do that and offer that to the property owners there, the commercial property owners, with the milling company that you're going to use and paving company that you're going to use?
Very good point, Peter. That's correct. When we do sidewalk improvements or actually any kind of roadway improvements, any property owner can simply go ask the contractor, hey, would you redo my driveway for me, or whatever else you want. That would be a direct transaction between you and the contractor. We, the county, doesn't get involved. But yes, the answer is you have that opportunity, and it's up to the contractor to agree to do what you want. They may have like another big project somewhere else they want to wrap up, and it's not, but typically, since they're already there, it's extra easy money for them, especially, for instance, if they're already going to mill and repave half of your parking lot behind your business, they say, sure, why not, Peter? This is the price. If you agree to it, they'll do the whole parking lot for you. But I want to stress, the county doesn't get involved with that. That's a direct transaction between you, the property owner, and the contractor.
Would not the county then get involved in encouraging the contractor to provide that without the county's involvement? The county's not involved, but encourage the contractor to provide that service to the property owners.
We cannot. We really, I didn't want to get into the nuts and bolts of it, but when we advertise a project, we put it up for bids, it basically says what our project is. And because we don't know, for instance, what you want done, for instance, in addition to milling and paving, you may want to have planters, you want to have lighting, or I don't know, whatever else you want. We don't know. So that's not in the scope that we're advertising. And we cannot force the contractor to do that. Based on my own experience, and I've been in this business for more than 30 years, Peter, most contractors, they're open to that, especially when a project is small, such as this one. If they're going to particularly be touching your parking lot already anyways, they're probably going to be very receptive to working with all the business owners.
All right, thank you.
Sure thing.
Matt K, do you have any questions that have come in?
Yes.
That you want to go through?
Yes, I do. First one I have was from Stuart Marcus asking what's going to happen to the access road between the Burtonsville repair business and the barber shop?
I presume you're talking about the road that's currently being used by the school, by Burtonsville Elementary School. I believe, I don't want to say 100%, I believe they have an easement to do that, but we don't have any plans for getting rid of it or anything. But I can tell you this, it's probably, once the project is constructed, it's rather unlikely that it's going to be used again. And the easement then could be reverted back to the property owners. So in other words, once we cut it off, we build the road, I doubt very much that anybody's going to want to try to use it. And as I want to stress, I'm not 100% that whether it's fee simple means the county owns that right of way, or it's an easement. I believe it's an easement. And either way, if it's a fee simple, we can even look into it to then dedicate it back or sell it back to the adjacent property owners.
Okay. The next question I have from Peter again was, how will the underground fuel facility be addressed for Burtonsville Oil?
We are not impacting it.
Okay. Next question is from Deirdre Middleton. Or actually, sorry, I think we asked that, Matt Johnson asked that one already about walkability and bikeability. Sorry, some of these were asked previously. The next is from Sebastian Smoot and says, can you describe any, quote, high quality design features for this road? Page 24 of the Burtonsville Crossroads neighborhood plan specifically calls out high quality design of these streets will be an important resource for the area. The master plan also specifically calls for street trees, but none are provided. What options exist to add streetscaping as recommended by the master plan?
Well, as far as providing an 8-foot sidewalk and a 10-foot shared use path, those are high design standards. That's like the cream of the crop wherever we design any type of roadway. But as I indicated earlier, the right of way for this project was specified by the county council to be 60 feet. And we have kept it that. And there are good reasons for that. We want to keep the footprint as small as possible and have the least impact to the property owners. So within a 60-foot right of way, once you put an 8-foot sidewalk and a 10-foot shared use path, and allow me to step back to remind, when I did this, when this project came out of original planning, it only had one sidewalk on one side. The county council didn't even want sidewalk on both sides. I designed the original one with 2 5-foot sidewalks. And now we have expanded it to 8-foot and 10-foot. So when you do that, there really is no more room. The buffer strips are only 4 feet wide, which does not allow for planting of trees. Even if you planted them, it's just too small for the root zone, and it can become actually a hindrance or danger, you know, because they're just not going to grow. They probably die in top clover. So having said that, it doesn't have it, but it does have green space, and we have to, any trees that we remove, any standing forest that we remove, we have to reimburse it. Now we're going to look to see if there's any space in the nearby area where we can replant it, but within the right of way that we have, I don't see anything that would be viable for trees to be planted. So in our business, we call that something has got to give. So we went with providing the most accommodations for pedestrians and cyclists, and there is not enough space to have trees, especially one that where they would thrive.
Another question from Sebastian. Will crosswalks be provided for pedestrians to cross the access road?
Yeah, we haven't looked into it. I think it makes sense to provide it at where the elementary school is. As far as the other places, to be honest with you, I don't think it really is warranted. This is going to be a very low speed road and very low traffic road. This is not like a main thoroughfare, and probably even less cars than the typical residential area. But obviously we will see after it's built, if it, you know, if it's one of those success stories, you build it, they'll come. Sure, we can always come back and add crosswalks subsequently. But right now, when I'm looking at it, given the nature of it and the fact that until SHA implements their project, I really don't see that it might get as much use or traffic on it until, you know, there's a change on 198 itself. But either way, if there is more traffic than we anticipate, we can always come back. But right now, the only place that would make sense would be where the school connects to.
Thank you. The next question I have is from Claire. Were all property owners notified about this meeting? And why are we waiting until final design to notify the property owners? Wouldn't it be better to hear concerns they have before final design?
Allow me to step back. As I said, I worked on this project once before for a number of years. And in my career, I've worked on a lot of projects. I have met with more people. I've had more public information meetings or hearings for this project than any other project I've ever worked in my career. So as far as contacts, we have done that. It is never our practice, because the design can change, to contact property owners. We don't even have plats. We don't know that till the final design is set. We know exactly where the road is, where the drainage is, where the utility impacts are, and where the stormwater management facilities will be. For that reason, not just this project, all of them, plats are prepared at the end. As far as contacting, having the reason I gave you the background, every contact that we had, we notified either via email or postcards for people to attend the meeting. And I'll be happy to meet with people again. As far as the impacts to any property owner, we will notify them, as I indicated earlier in the meeting, what the impacts are, exactly what they are. At this point, we don't know exactly what they are, so it would be premature. But once we have the plats, we will contact them, and our ears are wide open.
Thank you. The next question I have is from Peter.
Matt, before you get into that, Tim Couples has raised his hand. I think he might want to address what Michael was just talking about. So
yeah,
Tim,
allow me to introduce everybody. Tim Couples is our division chief. Tim, go ahead, please.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Appreciate everybody's thoughtful input here tonight. I just wanted to kind of clarify a little bit what Michael was saying about the contacting of the property owners. He's specifically referring to negotiations with them over the acquisition of the property, because until we have those final plats, you really can't tell, a property owner the number of square feet, and thus the value, arrive at a value that we want to offer them. But, absolutely, as he mentioned, also ears are always wide open. He's met with these property owners, to inform them about the project and hear their concerns. And we certainly are always open and willing to continue to do so. I just wanted to kind of underscore, what he was saying and just kind of clarify, the property acquisition component of it is when, our real estate folks will go out and actually meet with the property owner and make an offer based off of an appraisal. And that is correct. We just don't have the information to do that until the plots are final.
Tim, thank you so much.
Thank you, Tim. The next question is from Peter. How do you plan to address school pickup backups that occur at the elementary school, especially since the backup extends past the access road going up to the school?
Good point. I think part of the reason there is any backup, obviously, by the way, I have no control about the operation of the school and the circulation that they have. I want to say that we are working very closely. I worked with them closely the first time around. I'm working them closely again to work with them to address any issues that they have and improve their operation. Now, having said that, I believe once this road is constructed, their operation will actually improve. Right now, it's kind of like a narrow alley that they have to use to get access to the road instead of one-way direction, and then they exit from Burtonsville Elementary Access Road, which is signalized. Especially if the other access point for our road, BAR, is signalized, I believe that would drastically improve their operation too. But that's something I will, they're aware of, and we can work with them to see what they can do to improve their operation.
Thank you. My next question is from Cicero. Why are the parking spaces on the north side of the road rather than the south? It seems they would be more helpful to serve the commercial area on the south side.
That's a good point. It just fit better. It was just geometrically and also working out the drainage. It worked a lot better. And this way we had, I want to say, somewhat of a less impact the way the geometry works and chasing the grades work by having it on the north side. That's the reason we put it up there.
Thank you. I believe I have read all the questions I had sent to me. Please send another message if I missed it.
While we're waiting for that, I'll just have another call for verbal questions. If you would like to ask a question verbally, you can raise your hand. And again, if you've dialed in by telephone, you can do that by dialing *9. And if you're here on a computer, you can do that using either the reactions button or the participants button, depending on which version of Zoom you have. It looks like we do have a hand up from Sebastian Snoot. So Sebastian, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself. You should be able to go ahead.
There we go. Hello.
Yep.
Hi. Thank you. So my name's Sebastian Smoot. I live in Burtonsville and worked very closely with the community about a few years ago on the Fix 198 Now campaign, where we did a lot of community workshops to talk about this area. And as part of even though we were focused on 198, we were talking a lot about the access road. And I think a very important feature of the access road that I really want to emphasize from the Burtonsville Crossroads neighborhood plan is that road is, right now it doesn't make sense to have a road there because it doesn't look very pleasant in that area with all the cars and so forth. But the plan in the master plan is for that triangular area north of the access road in the Burtonsville Elementary School to become a public green. So that's going to be kind of a community center. So I just want people to keep that in mind, even though, like with Cicero's comment about where the parking would be, like one day that there might be a field there might be activities and programming there. So that's going to be a future active site. But the main thing I wanted to bring up in this question is to really go back to the topic of streetscaping. looking through the Burtonsville Crossroad neighborhood plan, and based on the community workshops that we have held through the Fix 198 Now campaign a few years ago, I think street trees and a very high quality road for people and pedestrians and activity are important. And just wondering, I mean, is there's got to be some way to put street trees in. I know that we're constrained by the right of way, but maybe could the sidewalk be 8 feet throughout, but then there are just some parts where it gets narrow because there's a street tree? Is that a possibility?
Sebastian, that's a possibility. I will take a look at it. It's just not a design that neither we like nor the people who are going to use it. So, but I will take a look at it with my team after the meeting. But it's not a good practice typically. And I know, by the way, let me reiterate where you're coming from. I like trees myself too, but it's just we're constrained. I'm going to stop talking. Tim's got his hand up so he can respond. Tim, go ahead.
You may need to be unmuted again.
Yeah. Matt, can you unmute Tim?
Yeah, Tim actually has the ability to unmute himself.
Okay.
So whenever you're ready, Tim.
Tim, you're breaking up.
I'm having some.
Yeah, I think Tim is having some connection problems, so we'll wait for him to come back. But Sebastian, I'll reiterate, we will take a look at it with my team to see if there is any place where we can provide additional planters or something.
All right, can you guys hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. No, I just want to appreciate your comments, Sebastian, and you know, one of the things that Michael is reacting to is some direction that, you know, I've given him is to be as consistent as possible with the Complete Streets Design Guide. And, you know, one of those things is, of course, to be in an environment like this, to be as wide as possible with the pedestrian amenities and the cycling amenities as well, you know, whereas, you know, 10 foot is pretty much what you need for a shared use path. But is the sense, I mean, I think we'd appreciate the feedback from the community if the sense is that, you know, an 8 foot wide sidewalk, you know, we could go as low as 6 feet underneath the Complete Streets Design Guide for normal cases, and even go below that, you know, to meet ADA requirements with even narrower, you know, the ADA requirements are not quite as stringent as what the Complete Streets Design Guide would envision as the, you know, kind of a vision for what we want for Montgomery County. But I think we would certainly be interested in hearing feedback from the community if it came to a choice between street trees and an 8 foot wide sidewalk. That's something I you know, certainly would like to hear from the folks. We might be able to get it in on one side if we could do I think what the minimum green space is 6 foot to plant a tree. So if you take 2 feet from the sidewalk, you still have a 6 foot sidewalk. You might be able to squeeze some of the smaller street trees in. Just be curious to you know, if the community has you know, a sense of what they prefer, please reach out to us via the comment mechanisms that we provided on our website, and you know, we'll look into it.
Thanks, Tim.
We got a couple more questions sent in during that, whether it was feasible to use smaller trees or plant trees in the specific areas where we have more space. I think you answered those questions fairly well, Tim.
Yeah.
Please let me know if you have.
Matt, can we let Tim has got his hands up again, so let Tim go ahead.
No, I think I couldn't figure out how to put it back down.
Okay, thank you, sir.
But no, I think, you know, another thing that we have been able to do in the past, if we're not able to fit it in the right of way, and our hands really are strung by the right of way width that we have been dictated to use. You know, we could look at working with individual property owners to see if they would like to have a tree planted on their private property, I'd be open to that as well. It wouldn't necessarily be between the pedestrian facility and the curb, but that's another option we could look at as well. If they granted us an easement to go ahead and put it.
Tim, thank you. As they say, great minds think alike. That's what I was just thinking, that what we could do, we could approach the property owners that in the back of the sidewalk, if they're willing, we can either put planters or carve out spaces to plant trees. So that would be another option we can look at.
Matt, did you still have more questions on your end?
I have one comment from Deirdre, but she also has her hand raised.
Deirdre, if you want to unmute yourself, go ahead.
Hi, this is Deirdre Middleton. First, I just wanted to say that I'm so excited that this project is finally happening, because a lot of us have been really looking forward to it for a really long time. So we're very excited to be seeing this progress. I also wanted to kind of draw attention to some of the context with the Burtonsville Elementary School. So there have been comments in the past about Burtonsville Elementary School, for example, at a recent school board meeting where there was decisions not to fund certain improvements, where one of the excuses given for that was that it was not an ideal school site because it was in an industrial area and that it had a sort of negative appearance, a negative bad road design and things like that. So this is something that really impacts Burtonsville Elementary School a lot. And that kind of ties into what Sebastian's talking about with making sure that we're really focusing on placemaking here and making sure that we have those aspects of landscaping and making sure we're having not just functional space, but really like an attractive space that makes the kids feel proud of where they are. So I just wanted to kind of put that context out there. And I don't know, hearing the different kind of pros and cons on the sidewalk width and things like that, I don't have a specific position on it right now, but I just wanted to kind of put that out there as context that is something that's very important to the community. Burtonsville Elementary School has had a very active beautification committee in the past year that has been working on trying to clean up the space around the school. We're about to do planting days where we're going to be putting in flowers and building community gardens and things like that. So if there's ways that our group can coordinate with efforts around beautification for that area, we're happy to do it. But we do want the sort of end result to be something that is attractive and makes the kids feel really proud of where they are.
Deirdre, thank you so much for that comment. I want to mention something Sebastian mentioned, which is you all look at what is there today, and for a lack of better word, it's kind of like a junkyard, where the road is going to cut through or, whatever else. And once the road comes, I think the appearance of even the businesses, the parking lot or the area will change. But more importantly, as he pointed out, in the master plan, in the triangular area, they call for various types of ideas for different types of improvements. And all of that, if it gets implemented, I think that will go a long ways, not just for the road, but also, as you can see, it touches the school, or it's, hugs the school on almost two sides, or at least one side. And that would really go towards what the notion, the ideas that you were describing, Deirdre. So that's not part of this project. I want to clarify that. It's not within the scope of this project, but obviously, if you look at the overall, what the master plan calls for in the future, obviously it can change the whole appearance of the whole entire area.
And Michael, it's kind of dovetailing with that question. I did get another chat from Steve, who says, does this project mean that the junkyard to the north of the access road will be cleaned up?
Well, let me put it to you this way. I'm not cleaning up anything that I don't have to touch. In other words, I don't want to get any more property other than what we need for the project, which is the road and anywhere where we're going to have stormwater management facilities. The first time that I designed this project, without getting into the technical details of it, we were putting a small pond facility in pretty much where the junkyard area is. And I believe, as I said, we haven't reached the end of preliminary design. I believe we're going to end up with that, but that all hinges on what my colleagues in the Department of Permitting Services would approve or agree to allow us to do. The new stormwater management guidelines prefer other, means of addressing stormwater management, but based on my experience, a lot of those probably would not work here for various reasons. One of them is the groundwater table is very high here. So if we end up putting the stormwater management facility for this project where we originally had it as part of the original design, quite a bit of what is, for lack of a better term, the junkyard, quite a bit of it would be the land for that pond would be where the junkyard is. And when we do that, obviously that'll get cleared up.
Hey, Matt, do you have any more questions?
That's all that I have.
Is any last call for any more questions or comments? If you want to raise your hand or send in a chat.
Okay, Matt K, if you don't want to go to the slide as far as the remainder of the schedule, which I had got. Well, that's the project website. This is the same website that you all went to sign up for the meeting. And it's here where I will add this PowerPoint, the very one that we went over tonight. And once the video footage, the recorded video footage been processed, we will also add that as well. So anybody who wants to watch the whole public information meeting, the recorded version of it. Thank you, Matt. You read my mind. Next, if you want to contact me, by all means, I want to first say thank you so much for every one of you who attended. This is exactly why we do it, to show you where we are going, what the design looks like, what the challenges are, what the scope and the goal is, and also to get feedback from you. And that's exactly what you did. And I appreciate that. If you have any questions, by all means, contact me. The best way to reach me is by email, michael.mitchell@montgomerycountymd.gov. That's all one word, michael.mitchell@montgomerycountymd.gov. So I'll be happy to answer your questions or any issues that you raise. If there are no other questions, I'll wait one more minute just in case somebody.
Yeah, we do have one.
Yeah, I see Peter has his hands up, so we'll hold up to see what Peter's next question is. Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, Michael, I would like to invite you to come out to Burtonsville Day, get a booth, and have your folks there to answer any questions regarding this project. It's in September, the last week in September, and I think people would appreciate to learn more about this. Those who don't, so I extend the invitation for you to attend and participate.
Thank you. Yeah, Peter, thank you for letting me know. If you don't mind, and email me the specifics of the exact date, and I presume it's going to be behind one of the shops over there. Yeah.
No, it's at Praisner Rec Center.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you.
Okay.
See, that's the kind of information I needed. Yes,
Yeah.
By all means, send me the information. I'll be happy to make arrangements with this caveat, and I think it goes for all of us. Let's hope there is no more Greek alphabet variations of COVID, and we are meeting in person. I'll be more than happy to come out.
Yeah. All right. Thanks again.
And we also have a hand up from Sebastian, so I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself, Sebastian.
Go ahead, Sebastian.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to say, great presentation. I really appreciate that you're taking the time to listen to the community input. And again, the community has been waiting for the access road for a really long time. So I think people are going to be excited to see it's moving along. The main reason I raised my hand is just to say that I'm going to see if just our Burtonsville community can do a meeting and see what people's thoughts are, what's more important, sidewalk or street trees. So
yeah, by all means,
follow up with you.
Yeah, you guys huddle up. You let me know, and I'll be more than happy to make accommodations. Given the nature of it, which is having a lot of shops and businesses, particularly if you've been to other countries like Europe and so forth, they try to make the widest accommodations for the pedestrians. I confess to you, it would have been very nice if we could have, you know, more robust landscaping as in trees, but we'll look at, you know, out of the box ideas such as the one that I floated. We will approach the businesses if they're willing to allow us to put like planters, for instance, you know, on their property, or we carve out spaces that we plant trees. We will look at options, but if you all get back to me and once you huddle up and you take a vote amongst yourselves, the businesses or the Burtonsville community, we'll be happy to take a look to see what we can do to make the choice between a narrower sidewalk, such as 5 foot, I believe that's the minimum we can go to, and the 8 foot, which is what I call the Rolls Royce. So.
Thank you.
I believe Steve has his hands up for a question. Steve, go ahead. You can unmute yourself.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. I just wanted to say thank you so much for holding this information session. So I've lived in Burtonsville my entire life. I'm quickly approaching 40, and I grew up here. I went to school at Burtonsville and Banneker and Paint Branch, and now I'm raising my family here. And it means a lot to us as local citizens to have people who are trying to create a sense of space, who obviously take pride in their work, and who are trying to help us to realize the potential of Burtonsville. I think for far too often, I think as Deidre pointed out, the citizens, there's so many things we want for our community. Sometimes we do feel like we're the forgotten part of the county. And so I want to thank you. Thank you for being, just for having care and intentionality in what you're doing. I hope as the process continues, just know that, we're very proud of our community. We want the best for our students, and we want a walkable, enjoyable place that we can be proud of. And so I just want to say thank you, and just hope that going forward, just try to keep, that we can all just keep that in mind as plans continue to progress.
Steve, thank you for that. By the way, I'll share with you all, I had reached my finish line. I had finished the design, and pretty much I even had the permit from my colleagues at the Department of Permitting Services at hand. The only thing was left to do, I even got the plats, gave it to my colleagues in property acquisition. Then we hit something called the Great Recession in 2008. So the funding got pulled away for construction, and it got postponed. So we are here again, but this time the project is funded for final design and property acquisition and construction as I'm sitting here talking to you. So hopefully it will come to fruition, and I believe it will go a long ways in addressing what you all are looking for. And since her name came up indirectly, allow me just to mention this project was near and dear to the heart of Councilmember Praisner. She's the one who was the champion for it. And when she passed away, then her late husband became the council member representing this area, and he picked up the torch. But unfortunately, as I said, because of the fiscal constraints, the funding was taken away. So, and in the interim, the design criteria changed, so we had to start all over again. But as you saw, we're moving forward, and I'm going to do my darnest to complete the design by the end of this calendar year.
Wonderful, thank you.
I will wait one more minute just in case anybody else has any questions. Well, let me reiterate again, if you all didn't get to ask your questions, or you thought of a question after the meeting, once again, you can send it to me via email, michael.mitchell@montgomerycountymd.gov. I'll be more than happy to address it. And if there are no other questions, then we can adjourn. I want to thank both Matts for helping me out. I couldn't have done this without them, and also Rick, who helped put this together and is overseeing the design. So if there's nothing else, I'll talk to you guys, everybody later. Take care. Bye-bye.